Good morning. This is the Alexander and Cleaver post-primary election wrap-up. I know we have a number of folks that have joined us already. And what we're going to do is we're going to wait a few minutes for more people to join on, and I'm going to kind of go over a couple of times to start kind of what the ground rules are, so to speak. As we go through this, and we're going to start off, and again, this is Rob Garagiola, we're going to start off covering the governor's race, the attorney general's race, and then we're going to move to the Maryland legislature, starting with the Senate and touching on some of the House of Delegate races, and then we'll talk about some of the local elections in some of the counties as well. Throughout the process, if you have questions, what we'll need to do is have you press 0 on your phone, and you're going to speak to Katie. She's going to essentially take the questions. You're not going to be live at that point in time. No one will hear you. And then Katie's going to be, through technology, we're going to be able to see what the questions are that come up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause at kind of each of those segments, governor, attorney general. And if there are a number of people asking the same question, what I'll do is I'll probably address that question. If there's one person who's asking a specific question, you're going to be in the queue, and you'll have the opportunity to ask the question, and everyone will be able to hear you ask that question. You'll know when your opportunity to ask the question will come up. Again, just to remind folks, you'll need to press 0 if you have questions throughout. We're going to be covering a number of races here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause for a few minutes. I want to probably start around 9:35, so another 2 minutes, and I'll probably repeat what I just said, so those who do join will be able to hear kind of what the outline is and how to ask questions. And again, for those that are going to be on for the duration, periodically I am going to restate how to ask questions because we may have some people pop on later in the conference call. So if everyone could just be patient and wait another couple minutes, I'd appreciate it. All right, it's my understanding that a few more people are getting on. Again, this is Rob Garagiola with Alexander and Cleaver. We're going to be going over in a couple minutes the post-primary election wrap-up. It was a long night for a number of folks. Had the opportunity myself to go to a number of kind of post-election parties with a number of victors, and we'll highlight that in a few moments. A few more people are going to be getting on, and I want to make sure that we have the greatest audience before we get underway, and we'll be getting underway in a couple of minutes. If during the call you have a question, you'll just press 0 on your phone, and you're going to speak with Katie. At that point in time, you're not going to be live, and we're going to see those questions in the queue on my end, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be walking through the various races, starting with the governor's race, followed by the attorney general's race, and then hitting some of the Maryland legislative races, the Senate, the House, and then also cover some local races. We're going to wait about another minute before we get underway here, so please be patient. All right, we're going to be getting underway here. Again, this is Rob Garagiola with Alexander and Cleaver. We're going to cover the post-primary election wrap-up. We're going to start out with the governor's race. Again, for those who have questions throughout, press 0, and that will get you in the queue, and you'll speak with Katie offline, and we'll try to address as many questions as possible. The call is going to be about an hour long. We have some ability to go over a little bit, and of course, if anyone has questions, you can reach out to me or other members of the Alexander and Cleaver team later today and tomorrow. There's going to be a lot of additional information that's going to be coming out from these elections. The information that I'm using is obviously unofficial results, but for many of these races, the victor is pretty obvious. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the governor's race. Obviously, Lieutenant Governor Brown was the clear winner with a little more than 51% of the vote. He carried Doug Gansler and Heather Mazur's home county of Montgomery County by a plurality with 47% and won big in Prince George's County. Doug Gansler actually won 3 jurisdictions, relatively small jurisdictions, Carroll, Cecil, and Queen Anne's. And Heather Mazur actually won Kent County, interestingly, with her 22% of the vote, only about 2 points behind Doug Gansler. She came second place in Baltimore City, beating Gansler 29% to 16%. She also beat Doug Gansler in Frederick County, Garrett County, and Howard County. Obviously, the race on the Democratic side, Brown benefited greatly by O'Malley's popularity. Doug Gansler clearly had some gaffes early in the campaign season, and I think teaming up with Ken Ullman erased the money advantage that Gansler had early on. It was also very clear from polling, because Brown had run very positive commercials in the end, that his internal polling numbers were showing that he was ahead throughout the race. On the Republican side, Larry Hogan was the clear winner with 43%. Former or current county executive, Harford County Executive Craig had 29% with Delegate Jeannie Hadaway on his ticket. He did prevail in Harford County and areas of the Eastern Shore. Ron George came in at 12%. He was in 4th place, prevailed in Anne Arundel County. There was a lot more regional support for the various Republican candidates. And then rounding it out was Lawler, who is from Southern Maryland, and he won a number of the Southern Maryland jurisdictions, came in 3rd place with 15%. What I would say about the governor's race is that Hogan, who was a former appointment secretary under Ehrlich, he's a businessman, he avoided a lot of the hot-button social issues, kind of the red meat issues, for Republicans. So none of the social issues. He's focused on a lot of the economic issues. And if you go to his website and you listen to his speech last night, he's going to be focused on kind of jobs, economy, and looking to hang kind of the O'Malley 40 taxes on the Brown-Ullman team. What I will say is regarding Brown's stance is I think he's already begun the shift. If you were listening to his acceptance speech last night, he also highlighted moving Maryland forward, jobs. He's looking at tax reform as well. So we're going to see Brown tack more to the center. Brown is not taking Hogan for granted. I think they're looking to raise probably another $8 million for the general election. And, while they're going to be focused on the general election and taking nothing for granted, it is a very Democratic state, and Brown does have the advantage of being able to start, and I think we'll see it quietly, planning for his transition. So we're not going to see a very public transition, but there are going to be opportunities with the Brown team to kind of begin the process of looking at, what they're going to do come January. So publicly taking the general election very seriously, raising a lot of money, behind the scenes, beginning to lay the blueprint for kind of jobs, economy, energy issues, education issues, environmental issues, and there are going to be a lot of opportunities to follow up with the Brown team with respect to that race. I'm looking to see if we have questions here. All right, we're going to move on then to the Attorney General's race. And again, there'll be opportunities for questions throughout. If there are questions, please press 0 and you'll be talking to Katie and she'll put you in the queue. And obviously there's going to be plenty of opportunities after this call as well, which is going to last for about an hour. The Attorney General's race was probably what many had thought would be one of the most competitive in the state. But we saw that Brian Frosch handily won this race. The absentees aren't in. There's a couple precincts outstanding. He's hovering at just under 50% of the vote statewide. He won big in Montgomery County with about 70% of the vote. He won a majority in Baltimore County, John Carden's home county, with about 53% of the vote, and pretty much did a clean sweep through all the large jurisdictions. Interestingly, John Carden with about 30%, so Brian Frosch had about 50, John Carden had about 30, and Aisha Braveboy at about 20%. John Carden actually won 10 of the 24 major jurisdictions in the state, areas of Western Maryland, Eastern Shore, and a little in Southern Maryland as well. So Brian Frosh clearly won the big jurisdictions, kind of up the I-270 as well as I-95 corridors. Aisha Braveboy did prevail in Prince George's County. I would say, what turned this around? This was probably a race of like it was Aesop's fable, the hare and the tortoise, where John Carden had the advantages of name recognition. And a year ago, 6 months ago, 3 months ago, 2 weeks ago, his poll numbers were in the 25 to 30% range. A lot of that, I think, was due to the Carden name. And I would say probably a couple of big turning points in the race. The revelation, rather, of him missing 75% of the votes in the Ways and Means Committee was huge, and then kind of the follow-up or the aftermath of that, in that he ended up using the state per diem that state legislators have for rooming and food during each of those days that he claimed or that he was not in the Ways and Means Committee for those votes. I think that was very detrimental to him and was a big turning point. And Frosh ran an exceptional campaign. I mean, really, one of the smartest campaigns from the get-go, well polished, mail as well as media. He got the endorsements of the Post, the Sun, and although there was some outside money, my feeling is that as people got to know Frosh throughout the state, they liked him. They knew of his integrity, his reputation, and there was a vulnerability with Carden's character. A little bit with the helicopter scandal and his proposal from a couple of years ago. There were some outside groups doing mailings on that, but I think predominantly the turning point in that race was really the missed Ways and Means vote, and then the fact that he was basically spending the state taxpayers' money while he was missing those votes. On the Republican side for the Attorney General race, there was only one candidate, Jeffrey Pritzker, who's run before. He's a lawyer from Towson. He has no website. While it may be an interesting race for the gubernatorial side, and of course, being a Democratic state, it's going to lean heavily towards Brown prevailing. The AG race, Frosh can start measuring curtains and beginning his transition because he's really going to have no contest whatsoever. The one thing I will say about Brian Frosh as Attorney General, and having worked with him in the Senate and having served with him on the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee for 4 years, he's going to be a very activist Attorney General. He's going to be very involved in energy issues. He was very involved in kind of the PEPCO reliability issues, and I'm sure will be engaged in the Exelon PEPCO merger. He's going to be engaged in telecom issues. He's going to be engaged in environmental issues. So I would say, as people are kind of measuring kind of what kind of Attorney General Frosh is going to be, he's going to be a very pro-consumer, pro-environmental Attorney General. I think he is accessible and is approachable, but he definitely has a liberal bent, hailing from a kind of Bethesda, Potomac, Chevy Chase area of Montgomery County, and I think that's the approach he's going to take for Attorney General. We have one question that did pop up, and I'll just address that, and someone asked if we have seen the last of Gansler. I recall probably about 10 or 12 years ago, there was a Washington Post article where Gansler basically mapped out by the year, he was state's attorney at the time, how he was going to become the Attorney General, do that for 8 years, become governor, do that for 8 years, and then run for president. Obviously, I think that's been dashed at this point. Some of the, as I've been reading some of the papers and the blogs this morning, some have said and characterized kind of the end of his campaign is not as gracious as he could have been. Many have characterized Heather Mazur's concession and how she, finished out her campaign is very gracious. Is the last of Gansler? I would say probably not, but right now I think he's got to lick his wounds and do some healing, and we'll see where we go from there. Going to move on to the Senate races, and again, if there are other questions, please press 0, and Katie will take your questions. And again, there's always opportunities to talk to us afterwards. And for those joining on more recently, I want to welcome you to the Alexander and Cleaver post-primary election wrap-up. Shifting to the Senate, one of my favorite bodies personally, we have a number of changes there. And I would say so far, with retirements and some of the losses that we saw last night, there are 10 of the 47 senators that are not going to be returning, and that number could go up. And that's in addition to my retirement and Senator Pipkin's retirement last year. So you had Steve Hershey, delegate, became senator last year, and Brian Feldman, who took my place. Essentially, you're looking at 12 new senators, or 2 that have 1 year under their belt. On the leadership side in the Senate, Jim Roby filled my shoes at Majority Leader for 1 year, and obviously he's retired. Catherine Pugh is angling strong to be the next Majority Leader. Rich Madaleno, who some thought was going to have a tougher race, but handily was reelected, is also angling for Majority Leader. I think Roger Manno might be in the mix as well. Obviously, the other leadership post of interest is who's going to be the next chair of JPR, and the front runner there, I would say, is Senator Jamie Raskin, but also Bobby Zirkin. There was an article written about that. Is another person who potentially could ascend to the chairmanship of JPR. Other names in the mix, obviously Lisa Gladden. Roger Manno's looked at it. Victor Ramirez is in the mix as well. But I would say right now it's between Bobby Zirkin and Jamie Raskin. The challenge for the Senate president is trying to balance out the geopolitical. Montgomery County had the Majority Leader and the chair of JPR. And if the Majority Leader goes to Catherine Pugh, it's more likely that Jamie becomes the next JPR chair. But there also might be some musical chairs with some of the vice chairmanships and subcommittee chairmanships, so there may be some opportunities for some change there. What I'm going to do with the Senate races is I'm going to kind of go by committee. It's easier to do there than it is with the House races. Starting with the Budget and Tax Committee, 13-member committee. Presently, there are 3 not returning members. I'll start with Senator Colburn, who was handily defeated by Delegate Addie Eckert, 57 to 43%. Addie, is a member of the Appropriations Committee, and I would say is high likelihood that she'll replace Senator Colburn on the Budget and Tax Committee. The other non-returning senator is Senator Verna Jones Rodwell. She, you may recall, represented Baltimore City and was redistricted into a district that comprised about 2/3 of Baltimore County and brought in Delegate Shirley Nathan Pulliam. Senator Jones Rodwell announced after she filed, even though she got about 25% of the vote, that she was not going to seek another term. So Nathan Pulliam will be coming to the Senate. I would say it's uncertain and maybe less likely that Nathan Pulliam will be going to the Budget and Tax Committee. That might be a slot that might enable the Senate President to do some musical chairs and bring someone else over to the committee. The other non-returning senator is Senator Jim Roby, who I mentioned before. Guy Gazzone was unopposed, superstar, member of the Appropriations Committee in the House. He is likely to go to the Budget and Tax Committee. And I'm just going to touch on a couple other races. There was some concern expressed by the Senate leadership that McFadden was going to have a very difficult race against Henson, who was a political operative. McFadden handily defeated him 81-19. Another race that many were watching was Yulee Curry and Delegate Griffith, and Yulee handily defeated her 58-32. 38. Doug Peters handily won, and many of the other folks handily won. I don't see in any of these other races in the Budget and Tax Committee being any general election challengers to the remainder of the incumbents on this committee. Madaleno, of course, was the other one I mentioned earlier. He won 58 to 42%. The one thing I will say, and I'll get to JPR in a minute, is that JPR is the committee that is seeing the least number of, and finance is another one potentially, least number of returning senators. And it's possible Joe Getty was kind of like a multi Senate switch, so to speak, with my retirement and Senator Pipkin's retirement, where Joe Getty moved from JPR to Budget and Tax. It is possible Joe Getty may slide back to JPR. The president likes attorneys on the Judicial Proceedings Committee, and due to some of the changes that are occurring, he may want Getty and kind of his legal mind back over there, and that can open up an opportunity for someone like Delegate Bates, who's from the Appropriations Committee, would also represent part of Carroll County and Howard County, which I'll get to in a little bit, to slide over into Budget and Tax in place of Joe Getty. But stay tuned. And the other thing I will mention at this point, too, and I should have mentioned at the beginning, is we're going to be doing this again after the general election on November 5th. Turning next to the Senate Finance Committee, like B&T, there are three legislators not returning to the Senate Finance Committee. I'll start with Senator David Brinkley, who is new to the Finance Committee, had served previously on the Budget and Tax Committee. He had a trouncing against Delegate Michael Huff. It was 67 to 32%. Some are trying to make comparisons to the Eric Cantor race. You know, David Brinkley was the minority leader, did work with Democrats in the Senate. That was a vulnerability that Delegate Michael Huff ably exposed. Michael Huff also slated with Delegate Afzali. Huff was in Ron Young's district, southern part of Frederick, and got redistricted into David Brinkley's district. And when that happened, decided to take on Senator Brinkley. Huff is a member of the Judiciary Committee. He's a former aide to Senator Alex Mooney. I would say it is highly unlikely that Huff will be on the Finance Committee. There will be some musical chairs going on in the Senate Finance Committee, and I'll get to that more in a minute. Barry Glassman is likely to be the next county executive of Harford County. Delegate Norman prevailed 67 to 33% in his primary, and is the likely successor to Senator Glassman. Kittleman is going to be in a race for county executive in Howard County, and Bates, who I mentioned before, one of his delegates, I would say is probably the favorite in that race, although Ryan Frederick, who appears to be the winner for the Democratic side, appears he's a pretty solid candidate, entrepreneur, business person, and but I would say this is a district that leans Republican. If Bates prevails, my guess is she ends up going to the Budget and Tax Committee. There are a couple of other races to watch in the Senate Finance Committee. Vice Chair John Astle always has a challenging primary. Right now, it's uncertain who the Republican candidate is going to be. The latest information we have is a 3-vote margin between Knowles, who's a military background, very conservative, and Quinn, who is prevailing by 3 votes in the Republican primary, also military background, businessman, sounding a more moderate message, middle-of-the-road message, but also on the, hailing more conservatively. That's going to be a race to watch for the general election. The other race to watch, and I would say will probably be the Democrats' toughest race as far as holding on to seats, that's going to be Jim Mathias. And even though he has the money advantage, He's going to be taken on by his delegate, McDermott, who currently serves on the Judiciary Committee. That race is interesting in part because you've got a situation now where the district was a two-sub-district district. So you had Norm Conway, who was running in a two-member district, and then there's another one-member district. What is occurring is there's going to be three districts. It's likely two of the three districts, the Republican candidate, nominee, and incumbent, are going to prevail and kind of carry that ticket, which is going to, have a negative effect for Senator Mathias. And I would also expect a lot of outside money, as well as Congressman Andy Harris, to play heavily in this district. This is a district that, will probably be the top district that Democrats need to try to hold on to that an incumbent holds. So when you look at it, the Finance Committee, the changes there, you've got three new members, definitely. You've got to watch the Asto race. You've got to watch the Mathias race. And you've got Brian Feldman, who succeeded me, who is, just completed his first year on the committee. So you're looking at, 4, 5, 3, new members on this committee, a very important committee to a lot of folks. The only other race I would touch on would be Kathy Klossmeyer. She handily won her primary, and I expect her to do the same in the general. She works very hard, and she's got high name recognition. Moving on to the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee, it's the one committee that it looks as if all the incumbents will be returning. That being said, I could see some musical chairs occurring with some of the slots on this committee. J.B. Jennings has been mentioned as a potential to lateral over to the Senate Finance Committee. Joanne Benson, some thought she was going to have a tough race. She won 56 to 44. Joan Carter Conway, the chair, was running a very spirited campaign against the Baltimore City Councilman. She handily won 65 to 35. I would say the one race to watch there would be the vice chair, Roy Dyson, who is running against his opponent, a veteran, Steve Woff, I think how you pronounce his name. Roy beat him 51 to 48 in 2010. Again, it's a district that is very conservative. Roy has done very well in it, and Roy's going to have to run a tough and spirited campaign to hold on to it again. So there, one race to watch, I would say, for the general, and I think what we may see is some kind of folks from this committee moving off and some folks moving on as the musical chairs, but we're not going to know any of that definitively until after the general. As I mentioned early on, the Judicial Proceedings Committee is also seeing a lot of members that are not going to be returning. Right out of the gate, essentially, we have 4 members not returning. Obviously, Senator Frosch, he's going to be replaced by Delegate Susan Lee, who handily won her primary. She's likely to be on the Judicial Proceedings Committee. She hails from the Judiciary Committee. Lisa Gladden handily defeated her opponent. Jim Broshin handily defeated Connie Julius, 69 to 31. He's going to be running against Dr. Tim Robinson. It's a very conservative district. That is a race to watch. But if anyone knows Jim Broshin, he is a very, very tenacious campaigner. And if any Democrat could win that seat, Jim could win it. And I would expect him to remain on JPR if he prevails. Dr. Robinson would probably be sent over to EHE. Jenny Forehand also retiring from the Senate. The Delegate Simmons and former Delegate Kagan race was a race that many had a difficult time predicting who the victor would be, although in the end, Cheryl was finishing very strong with the endorsement of Congressman Van Hollen, the endorsement of Governor O'Malley, a number of other high-profile endorsements, as well as many of the newspaper endorsements. She also had the support of Senator Jenny Forehand, who she ran against 4 years ago and narrowly lost to. Cheryl won 54 to 46. Had Simmons won, he would have been a shoo-in to serve on JPR. Cheryl, not being an attorney, having served from 94 to 2002 on the Appropriations Committee, would love to go to Budget and Tax. That's not going to happen. It'll be interesting to see what committee she goes to. I do not think she'll be on JPR. Steve Hershey handily defeated former delegate Richard Saucy. And if you recall, when E.J. Pipkin retired, there was a spirited contest among the various central committees of the 4 counties represented by that district. Saucy, Smeagol, and Steve Hershey were all seeking to get the nomination, and ultimately O'Malley had to make the decision, and it ended up being Steve Hershey. He prevailed 56 to 44. There's been talk that Steve Hershey may go to the Finance Committee, so stay tuned for that. Nancy Jacobs also retiring. Mary Delaney James handily defeated Art Helton, former senator, who had run multiple times against Nancy Jacobs. Mary Delaney James won 61 to 39%. I would say this race is the Democrats' best shot for a pickup. It still is a district that I would say leans Republican. Mary Delaney is going to be running against Bob Casserly, who prevailed. Actually, I don't think he was even opposed. He's a former military, served on the Harford County Council, Republican Central Committee, and a small business owner in Bel Air. It's a military district with Aberdeen Proving Ground there. He's a very solid Republican candidate. That's a race to watch for in the general election. Senator Muse was another race that many were looking at very closely. He may have benefited from multiple candidates. Won with just under 51% of the vote. Veronica Turner, Delegate Turner, had 33%. Senator Raskin is returning, obviously. Senator Shank. Senator Stone is retiring, and everybody expected Johnny Olszewski to prevail in the primary. He did, 62 to 38%. Johnny Ray Salling was unopposed, the Republican in that district. He was born and raised in that district, Army background. He was a steel worker at Bethlehem Steel, kind of blue-collar roots. I would say it's a district that Johnny O should win, but he certainly cannot take it for granted. His opponent is a very attractive candidate for the makeup of that district. And then Zirkin will be returning as well. And as I mentioned before, I would say the race for JPR chair advantage Raskin, but Zirkin is clearly in the mix for that. It'll be very interesting to see kind of what general election, depending on what happens in certain races, like what opportunities open up for the Senate president to move people around to change the leadership makeup in the Maryland Senate. Again, we see a few more people are joining the call. The Alexander and Cleaver post-primary election wrap-up. If you do have questions, please press 0. And again, there'll be opportunities, obviously, at any point in time with members of the Alexander and Cleaver team to follow up. In the House, there is quite a bit of turnover. Again, there are 141 delegates. We know to date, 49 of 141 are not returning, and that number may grow. Looking at the leadership of the House, we know that the Vice Chair, Jimmy Malone of Environmental Matters, is not returning. There are numerous subcommittee chairmanships, and I'm not going to attempt to try to cover all of them in the various committees, but it's something we can follow up with folks later today or tomorrow if there are specific questions with specific subcommittees and what it may mean. Some committees rely on the subcommittees a little more. Other committees do not in the House, but there are going to be a number of openings there. What I'm going to do with the House is just kind of do a broad overview of kind of the status of the committees and then kind of walk through each of the races and maybe hit a few highlights. on some of the races before I talk about some of the local races in some of the counties. The Appropriations Committee, there are 9 of the 24 members that will not be returning to the Appropriations Committee. A lot of the leadership there is intact, but you've got a number of folks that are not going to be returning, some who went to higher office, some who lost their races. Environmental Matters, a committee I would say that has some of the fewest changes. There are 6 members of the Environmental Matters Committee that are not returning. There will be a new vice chair. Some early speculation is that Steve Lafferty from Baltimore County may be the next vice chair. Speaker Bush is obviously going to be waiting till after the general to make final decisions on that, but I would say he's a front runner to replace former delegate, or still current delegate, Jimmy Malone. Looking at the Economic Matters Committee, nearly half of the committee, 12 members, are not returning. A number of subcommittee members are not returning. Recall Delegate Feldman served on that committee up until last year. So there's a big, these two committees, which Finance Committee and Economic Matters, they share a lot of jurisdiction, a lot of changes in both. So there's going to be a huge learning curve as we're looking at the 2015 General Assembly session, dealing with energy issues, telecom issues. Finance Committee also deals with health care. It's going to be kind of a slow start to the 2015 General Assembly session due to some of the changes. And there may be additional changes, obviously, with the general election, and then additional musical chairs that the Speaker may do with some of the people that are currently sitting on the Economic Matters Committee who he may tap to go to another committee. The Judiciary Committee, there were questions about whether or not Chairman Joe Valerio was going to come back. Recall he had been on the ticket with Senate President Mike Miller for decades and was redistricted to Doug Peters' district as a result of the latest redistricting. He did prevail. He will continue to serve as the chair of the Judiciary Committee, Dumais as the vice chair. Again, 6 members not returning from the Judiciary Committee. In the Ways and Means Committee, we have 8 delegates not returning. Hickson, some was wondering because of the Heather Mazur running for governor and Tom Hucker, Delegate Hucker running for county council. We had a number of candidates, good candidates running for that district, District 20, and Sheila was, of course, the top vote getter in that district. And rounding out with the Health and Government Operations Committee, we have 8 members not returning. The leadership there largely intact in that committee. We have a couple questions that just popped up. Someone asked about the Gansler Apple ballot. That's something that the teachers in Montgomery County have trademarked, and they're going to continue to pursue that. They were not able to get an injunction yesterday. For those that don't know, Anthony Brown got the Apple ballot endorsement. That's the teachers union endorsement. It's very coveted, I would say, in particular in Montgomery County. It's something that legislators in Montgomery County seek, as well as statewide office holders seek. In Prince George's County, it's more getting on the Senate slate that's very meaningful. But the Apple ballot is a very big deal in Montgomery County, and Gansler had a kind of a copycat Apple ballot that he had volunteers handing out to kind of say, hey, teachers are behind him as well, and that'll get ferreted out in the courts because they're going to try and preserve that for future races. Looking at some of the House races individually, and I'm just going to take these somewhat in order and just try to hit some of the highlights. One of our colleagues at Alexander and Cleaver, Cass Taylor, former speaker, held District 1C out in Western Maryland, which is the Cumberland and part of Washington County. Allegheny County Commissioner Mike McKay handily won the primary with 56% of the vote. he's going to be running against Nick Scarpelli, who is a business owner and a city council member in Cumberland. I would say advantage for McKay, but Nick Scarpelli can't be counted out. He is someone, because of his background, and I got to know him pretty well when I campaigned out in Western Maryland. He knows people across party lines, Republican, Democrat, Independent, but it is a district that is a lean Republican, but it's a race to keep an eye on, I would say. Kind of moving further east to Senator Shank's district, you've got some candidates, Elizabeth Paul, who's worked for various elected officials over the years on the Democratic side, but it's Neil Parrott and Delegate Serafini that obviously prevailed in their primary. They're going to be the likely winners, I would say, in that race. And then you have John Donahue, who generally has a tough general election, but has prevailed each time, and I would expect him to prevail as well. Moving into Frederick County, Ron Young's district, I would say the news there is Carol Krim served as an alderman, and the city of Frederick was the top vote getter. And there's a two-member district in the city of Frederick, and then there's a one-member district in the outskirts. We're likely, but it's not a sure thing, but we're likely to have a second Young in the legislature with Karen Young, Ron's wife, who also in the past has served as alderman in the city of Frederick, ran for mayor, won the primary last year, but lost in the general election. This district is Democratic leaning. It was Delegate Claggett and Delegate Hogan's seat. Sue Hecht held it for a couple of years, or a couple of terms, with a break in between. I would say lean Democratic, Krim Young, but it's possible, one of the Republicans could prevail in the general. And then the other district is I would say lean Republican district, and Stephen Slater is the Democrat, kind of well known in politics in Frederick, but he's going to have a tough road ahead of him in that district. David Brinkley's district, now Huff, who's going to be the next senator. Kathy Afzali was the top vote getter, Delegate Afzali. The number 2 vote getter was Delegate Kelly Schultz. And the number 3 vote getter, which is going to be the next delegate from that area, is David Boat III, who has a DOD, Defense Department background. He will be coming to Annapolis. Looking at Carroll County, Joe Getty's district, Susan Krebs is coming back, Justin Reedy as well, and Doc Elliott, Delegate Elliott, lost pretty handily. Having Shoemaker, who's the mayor of Hampstead and was a county commissioner, is going to be the 3rd Republican and will also be coming to Annapolis. In District 6, Johnny Olszewski's district, and again, it's likely to be Johnny O. Mike Weir, Delegate Weir, the incumbent, was the top vote getter. Nicholas D'Amato was number 2, had previously served in the Baltimore City Council, and the 3rd vote getter, Jake Morovic, was a former delegate from 94 to 02. Those are the top 3 vote getters. I would say lean Democratic, but it's a very kind of blue-collar area. It's an area where a Republican could prevail, so it's a district to keep an eye on. District 7 is all the 3 delegate incumbents are returning, Palaria, McDonough, and Shalega. District 8, Kathy Klossmeyer's district, Eric Bromwell was the top vote getter. Many may know Renee Smith, who served as Kathy's aide for many years. She was barely number 2, and rounding it out, Bill Paulshock. John Cluster, Republican in that district, did prevail in the primary, and I'd say has an advantage in the general. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how things play out in that district. For the delegate race, I would say it's, to keep it on the watch list, so to speak, for the general election. Looking at District 9, we've got Warren Miller, who's going to be returning, and the Republican top vote getter in that district, so Howard and Carroll counties, is Trent Kittleman, Allen's stepmother and former Deputy Secretary of MDOT in the Ehrlich administration. I would say very likely she will be coming to Annapolis as a delegate. Rounding it out to 9B, which I would say Democrats. Actually, 9B is the one that's I think the one that's no, that's Howard County. Bob Flanagan, he was a former delegate, was the transportation secretary. Handily won the primary with 56% of the vote. Tom Cole on the Democratic side. This is a race to watch, I would say, as well. There's a possibility that a Democrat could prevail here. Tom's background is in the nonprofit arena against Bob Flanagan, former delegate. Going to District 10, we're going to have Adrian Jones coming back, top vote getter by a lot. Jay Jalisi, Democrat physician, and Benjamin Brooks, businessman. Those are going to be the likely three delegates in Annapolis, very Democratic district, with Adrian Jones kind of leading that group. District 11, the incumbents Dan Morheim and Dale Stein will be coming back. This was John Cardin's district. Shelley Heddleman, who has been involved with Senator Cardin, nonprofit background. Interestingly, she was the top vote getter in that district. Dale Stein was second, and Dan Morheim third. Fourth was far distant. So those were the clear top three, and they will be coming. All three will be in Annapolis. Going to District 12, a lot of new names and new faces. There were multiple candidates in this district. Howard County, part of Baltimore County, at Case Myers District. Top vote getter there was Clarence Lamb, who hails from Capitol Hill, worked for very liberal California Henry Waxman. Terrell Hill is a physician, was the second vote getter, and then distant third, Eric Ebersol, has a teaching background in education. It's likely that those will be the three new delegates coming to Annapolis. Going to District 13, Guy Gazone's district, Frank Turner and Shane Pendergrass, top vote getters, along with Vanessa Atterbury. And actually, Vanessa Atterbury, again, these are preliminary numbers still, had slightly more votes than Shane, followed by Frank Turner in third. Vanessa had run once before in Montgomery County, I think is the niece of Frank Turner, as a lawyer by background. All three, obviously, are going to be serving in the Maryland General Assembly come 2015. District 14, a lot of these are Montgomery races. Lutke, Kaiser, Zucker, they're coming back. District 15, my old district, Aruna Miller, Delegate DeMay, handily won. There was a spirited campaign for that third slot. David Fraser Hidalgo replaced former delegate, now Senator Feldman. He's going to be coming back. He served in the last session. On the District 16 race, Frick handily won. Ariana Cali handily won. There was an opening because Susan Lee moved up to the Senate. Mark Corman, a lawyer very involved in Democratic politics in Montgomery County, takes the third slot. He'll be coming as a delegate. District 17, now Kagan's Senate district, Kumar Bharvi handily won. Gilchrist presently is in third place, and a newcomer and a former staffer of mine when I ran for Congress, Andrew Platt, is rounding out the ticket there. Susan Hoffman, not far behind in fourth. She's about 70 or so, 60-some votes behind Jim Gilchrist. It's possible absentee could affect that race, but right now it looks like it's going to be Kumar Bharvi, Jim Gilchrist, and Andrew Platt for District 17, Gaithersburg-Rockville area. District 18, all three incumbents, Anaslo Gutierrez, Jeff Wellstreicher, Al Carr coming back. District 19, Roger Manos district, Bonnie Cullison, Ben Kramer handily won. The interesting there is you had Ben Kramer behind Charlotte Crutchfield, the Democratic activist, and Roger Manos, Senator Mano, behind Marisa Morales She was a staffer to Mano. She looks like she handily came in third place and will be the next delegate from District 19. In District 20, I touched on this before. Sheila Hickson was the big winner there. This is where Hucker and Mazur left to run for other office. They ended up slating Jamie Raskin and Sheila Hickson with Will Smith and David Moon. Many may know David Moon because of his blog that he had done over a number of years. Very liberal, he's going to be a very outspoken activist type of delegate in the General Assembly. Will Smith, Naval Reservist, ACLU, very smart person, is going to be rounding out that ticket, all, coming to Annapolis. Senator Rosapep, his delegates and the senator were all unopposed. Ben Barnes, Frush, Pena Melnick, all coming back. Heading into Prince George's, Tawana Gaines, Ann Healy, Alonzo Washington, all coming back. Rashern Baker's son was a distant third, did not prevail in that district. Moving on.
Fourth, that's 3 members.
Fourth. Came in fourth. Distant fourth. Yes, distant fourth. Came in distant fourth. Got people here kind of making sure I've got my facts correct. Moving on into Doug Peters' district. You have some sub-districts here. Valentino Smith, unopposed, coming back. This was Valerio and Marvin Holmes. Valerio came in second in that 2-member district. Both will be coming back. Valerio handily prevailed in that district. The next district, it was interesting to see whether or not Tiffany Alston was coming back. She kind of got in a little bit of trouble a few years ago. She did not prevail, and I'm looking at the numbers. It does not look like the absentee would affect it, but it's possible, but I don't expect it. Michael Vaughn will be coming back. Carolyn Howard will be coming back. And then we've got Eric Barone, who comes with an attorney background, likely to be coming to Annapolis for the 2015 session. Continuing on, Yulee Curry's district. Derek Davis, top vote getter by a lot. You've got Darrell Barnes, who placed third, a veteran and small business owner. Angela Angel, an attorney and has some banking background, also prevailed. Those are going to be the new delegates from that district. Moving to District 26, former Prince George's Councilman Tony Knotts was the third vote getter, is going to be the next delegate from that district. Jay Walker and Chris Valderrama will also be coming back, so you get Muse, Valderrama, Walker, very interesting district, and Tony Knotts to round out the team there. Moving on to District 27, Mike Miller's district, you have 3 sub-districts for that district. James Proctor is going to be coming back, and I expect him to handily to win that. Former Sheriff Michael Jackson prevailed big time, is going to be the next delegate from 27B. And then Sue Cullen, former delegate, is going to be taking on Mark Fisher in 27C in Calvert, and I think there's a little bit of Prince George's County in that district. Mark had defeated Sue the last time around. If you look at the total votes in that district, Sue received in her primary almost 2,200. Mark received almost 2,000, so almost a 200 vote spread based on primary votes. That is a race to watch. The Senate President's going to be, amping it up to make sure Sue Cullen gets back into the General Assembly, but that's definitely a race to watch. District 28, Mac Middleton's district, Sally Jameson is returning. C.T. Wilson was a top vote getter. And Edith Patterson, retired educator, will be rounding out that ticket. District 29A, we're shifting to Roy Dyson's district, Johnny Wood's old seat. Matt Morgan won in a 3-way Republican primary with 45% of the vote. Daniel Slade was the sole Democrat. That's a race to watch as well. It's a district or sub-district that could go either way. It's a very conservative area. Bohannon's coming back, I would say, but again, he can't take anything for granted. He's running against Deb Ray in the general. Moving on to 29C, Tony O'Donnell was unopposed. I know the Democrats would love to take Tony O'Donnell out. I still give him the advantage. Democrat was unopposed, Len Zouza. Going to the Speaker's District, two-member district, Speaker Bush handily obviously will be coming back. The newcomer to that district, this was Ron George's seat, who ran for governor, is Chuck Farrar. He's a former county council member. He's a business owner. It's very Annapolis-based, redistricted district. I would give advantage to Chuck Farrar, but it's possible. You got Herb McMillan coming back, and he's going to be running strong and making a case to reelect him. And then Genevieve Linder is the other Republican in that two-member district. You've got Mitchell Stevenson, a Democrat, in 30B, the other portion of Assel's district, which is more Republican, and the winner on the Republican side is Seth Howard. That part of the district is advantage Republican. Moving on to other areas of Anne Arundel County, Ned Carey, who had run a couple of times against Simon Eyre, prevailed in his Democratic primary for delegate in 31A. It's a district, sub-district that was created that leans Democratic. There's a good chance that Ned Carey will be coming to Annapolis, but again, it's still possible a Republican could win that. Terry Lynn DeGraw was the only candidate for the Republican side in that sub-district, but Ned Carey, I would say, has a clear advantage. In 31B, you've got Nick Kipke and Simon Eyre, Senator Simon Eyre's daughter, Megan Simon Eyre, were the two top Republican vote getters. I would say it's a safe bet that both of them, Kipke will get reelected, and Megan Simon Eyre has a lot of advantages, and it's a Republican-leaning two-member sub-district. Moving on to District 32, Ed DeGrange's district, Pam Beidle handily won in her primary. Sophocles came in third. Newcomer Mark Chain, a business owner, came in second. I would say there's a possibility a Republican could prevail, but I know Ed DeGrange will be working hard to get all three of them elected. District 33, you've got McConkey and Kathy Vitale. She was a strong top vote getter. Sid Saab, rounding out the Republican ticket, is a small business owner. The top Democrat was Henry Green in that district, although they pretty evenly spread the votes there. I would say this is a district that, it tilts obviously to the Republicans. 34A, there are two candidates for that sub-district. Many thought that Pat Murray, former political operative for Speaker Bush in the 2006 election and operative for Mike Miller in the 2010 election, would be one of those two seats, and he came up short. Mary Ann Lasanti was the top vote getter in that two-member district, is a council member, had high name recognition, and then Marla Posey Moss came in second, beating Murray, at least with the preliminary results, by a little more than 100, almost 110 votes, has an education background. This is the same district that Glenn Glass is currently the delegate of. It's possible, that's a district that could play, one Republican could win, one Democrat could win. This was Mary Delaney's seat. Glass was the top vote getter. The second vote getter was Mike Blizzard on the Republican side, comes from higher ed. And then going to 34B, which is now Susan McComas. She kind of lateraled over to this district from another district. The Democrat in this more leaning Republican district is Cassandra Beverly. She's a lawyer by background. Dave Rudolph in 35A is likely to come back. Top Republican was Kevin Hornberger. In 35B, you've got two, actually very close in that race for the Republican side, and 34%, 33%, and 32%. Andrew Casserly, Teresa Riley, looking like they both prevail over the third candidate in this two-member district on the Republican side, Jason Gallion. Moving on to District 36, Hershey's district, Smeagol, maybe ousted in this district. Jay Jacobs is the top vote getter. Jeff Grist has the third most votes, and Steve Arentz of Queen Anne's was in second. I would say from a primary perspective, it's going to be Republicans. Keep an eye on that as far as absentees, on whether or not Smeagol pulls through or not. I think that third seat is a tough one to call right now. Moving on to District 37, you've got top vote getter on the Republican side, Johnny Motz, a well-known name in that district. This is Richie Colburn's district, and Chris Adams, the number 2 slot, both likely to come to Annapolis as delegates. 37A is the kind of the Democratic seat. Cherise Sample Hughes will be the next delegate coming to Annapolis from that district. Going to 38, and this is Jim Mathias's district. This is the district I said was going to be very tough for him to hold on to. He still could hold on to it, but will be challenging to hold on to. Charles James Otto is the Republican. Percy Purnell is the Democrat. This is a Republican district. The Democrat possibly, but it's very likely that Otto is going to be the next delegate from that part of the state. Norm Conway is in a much safer single-member delegate seat. Will likely be coming back as a result. And then Mary Beth Carrozza is the Republican in 38C. Judy Davis, the Democrat, very highly favorable that Mary Beth Carrozza will be coming to Annapolis. District 39, also Montgomery County, they were unopposed. It's Nancy King's district. So Barkley, Resnick, Robinson all coming back. Once I wrap through this, I'm going to touch on some local races. So stick around for a little longer. We'll be wrapping up in a little bit. In District 40, Catherine Pugh's district, the big surprise there is that Sean Tarrant looks like he is not coming back to Annapolis. Antonio Hayes, Frank Conaway, and Barbara Robinson. And it looks like Sean Tarrant is out of range to make a comeback with absentee. But keep an eye on that. But it looks like he's out of range to make a comeback to Annapolis. District 41, Nat Oaks, Sandy Rosenberg, and Joe Carter will all be coming back. Steve Lafferty's in a sub-district. He's coming back. 42B, Boatler and Allman. Okay, so Boatler was in a different district. He was in Kathy Klossmeyer's district. He got redistricted now into Jim Broshen's district. I give advantage to Sue Allman returning and Boatler in a new district. Moving to 43, Kurt Anderson, Maggie McIntosh, Mary Washington, all coming back. District 44A, this was 3 delegates in one district. Keith Haynes, Kiefer Mitchell, Melvin Stukes. The big winner there, Keith Haynes, by a healthy margin. He will be the one of 3 delegates coming back in that district. In 44B, the 2 top vote getters there, and I'm looking at the numbers, it may be a little close, but you got Charles Sidnor and Pat Young, Aaron Barnett possibly, depending on how the final numbers come in. Talmadge Branch is coming back. Cheryl Glenn is coming back. And Corby McCrae rounding out that district. Moving on to District 46, Bill Ferguson's district. Brooke Learman, daughter of Terry Learman, former Democratic Party chair and Steny Hoyer operative. She was the top vote getter in that district among the delegates. Pete Hammond, number 2, and Luke Clippinger rounding it out in number 3. And then finally, District 47, Will Campos is going to be the next delegate from 47B. That's a lock. He was unopposed. And then in 47A, Delegate Mike Summers will be coming back. Malcolm Augustine looks to be the prevailing candidate over Joseph Solomon, although absentee numbers there's a possibility it could change the outcome. I'm sorry, strike that. Jim Tarlew was the top vote getter in that district, followed by Mike Summers and Malcolm Augustine. Jimmy Tarlew, CWA, communication workers, labor leader, is going to be the next delegate, along with Mike Summers and Augustine. Oh, Summers is gone?
Summers is Diana Fennell.
Oh, Diana Fennell, okay. Oh, Diana Fennell. The last district is tripping me up. Diana Fennell is the one that's going to be coming. So Summers is out. Two-person district. Okay. We have a few local races that I want to touch on. The big one that was difficult for people to call was what was going to happen in the county executive race in Anne Arundel County. Steve Shoup handily prevailing over Laura Newman in that district. The one race, Jerry Walker, who's been serving as the president of the council, defeated his Republican challenge, is likely to be a safe bet in the county council returning there. Baltimore County, Kevin Kamenetz got behind Jonathan Herbst in Council District 2. Vicki Allman handily won with 75% of the vote. Is that going to have any impact on Kamenetz's agenda in Baltimore County? Stay tuned as far as that goes. In Frederick County, the interesting thing in Frederick County is that for the first time we're going to have a county executive. Blaine Young, who's the president of the county commissioners, prevailed in the Republican primary with 53% of the vote, is going to be taking on Democrat Jan Gardner, who served as a county commissioner for 8 years. She's been staffing Senator Mikulski in Western Maryland. That is a race to watch. Frederick County is the fastest growing county, along with Charles County. It's a rapidly becoming a more diverse county. It'll be interesting to see how that race plays out for the next county executive in Frederick County. Turning to Montgomery County, many were thinking it would be much more close between Ike Leggett and Doug Duncan, and then you also had Phil Andrews in the mix. It appears that Ike Leggett prevailed handily with 45% of the vote, trailing Doug Duncan with 32 and Phil Andrews at 22. Roger Berliner handily defeated Dutchie Trachtenberg. Delegate Tom Hucker will be in the county council in Montgomery County, and Mayor Sid Katz will also be the newcomer in Montgomery County. And I would say those are kind of and Prince George's County. Kind of the takeaway in Prince George's County is that, and I mentioned this earlier, Montgomery County, the teacher ballot, the Apple ballot, is huge. In Prince George's County, it's getting on the senator's ticket, so to speak. County Executive Rashawn Baker obviously handily won re-election, but he backed a number of candidates that did not prevail in the county council. Delegate Doyle Neiman, it's somewhat too close to call, but he looks like he may prevail in becoming a council member in District 2 over Denny Taveras, who Senator Victor Ramirez was backing. But that race is only about an 18-vote difference and could change. The other big one, Vince Canales, FOP leader in Prince George's, former Mike Miller staffer, and Doug Peters staffer, Todd Turner, handily prevailing there. And I think that pretty much rounds out some of the local races. And again, we're going to be doing this following the general election. If there are any other questions, I hope this was helpful information. There's a lot more that we can add flavor to some of these races more specifically, but I tried to cover, a wide cross-section, and would certainly encourage you to call us later in the day or tomorrow, and we will be able to provide, more detailed feedback specific to your interests. Again, want to thank you for joining us. We had about 70 people join us for this call, and we look forward to continue to serving you, over this year and into the next session. So with that, I'm going to say thank you, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks so much.